And this is my last question, but I want you to tell the audience that is aspiring venture investors, how should they start a fund? This is a question I also asked back in December, and I think I first answered incorrectly. I think I just said fundraising, right? But that wasn't really it. So could you actually tell that again to the audience?
Sure. I actually just had this conversation with a friend today who's trying to get a fund off the ground. So I think that,
oh, nice.
I think that there's a very simple thing to do. Probably 3 steps you could do in an hour or 2. So,
okay,
answer 4 questions. The questions would be, what is the sector you're investing in? What is the stage you're investing in? What's your geography? And the 4th question is, what's your edge? And and your edge should be sharp, and it should be important, and it should help you win deals. Then I would say, based on that strategy, what does your sweet spot investment look like? I see myself investing $2 million at the Series A. Then you say, okay, how many of those could I do in a year? And then multiply that by roughly 4 years, which is going to be the investment period of fund. So let's say I think I could do 4 deals a year. That's $8 million a year. Over 4 years, that's $32 million. I factor in that I'm going to invest 80% of my capital because 20% is fees. That works out nicely. I didn't mean for it to do this, but it works out to be a $40 million fund. So you have $40 million, raise it. 8 is going to pay your fees. 8 million will pay your fees over 10 years. And then you have 32 to invest. So now you've got, okay, now I've framed it. And then if you're sitting in front of me, I would say, okay, give me your portfolio of those 32 companies. Right now, if you're going to go out and start investing, give me 5 companies you would target. Write them on the whiteboard. And I'd have them write the companies on the whiteboard. There's companies that are live. And if they can't answer that question, like I have 10 companies I would kill to invest in, I wouldn't even take them very seriously, because if you're not thinking, if you need a checkbook to think about this, you're not a venture capitalist. You're like, you are obsessed with this. So you write 5 or 10 or whatever it is, and then circle the best one. Like if you had to start with one, what would it be? Circle it and say, okay, go do that deal. Whether it's 10,000, 50,000, doesn't matter the amount. Right. Go figure out how to scrape together the money and get the entrepreneur to take your capital and use your edge, and get that entrepreneur to build a reference for you on wow, I had you on and beyond, something that if he wasn't there, we would have lost enterprise value. He created this enterprise value. And the other thing it allows you to do is see if you can do it. See if you like it. You may hate it. And gosh, it's so great to do one deal and hate it than to sign up for 10 years and have that ball and chain, be a prisoner. It's not a sexy business. It's a grind. And we compare it sometimes to things like making movies. It looks sexy, but if you know people who make movies for a living, it's a tough, grinding, slow kind of business. But if you love the grind, it's awesome. It's a fun way, right? So it gives you a taste for that. And some people will say, well, where am I going to go get 50,000? Well, if you can't raise 50,000, how are you going to raise 40 million?
Sure. There you go.
So if you just have these things, and I did this with Ko when I first, Ko and I first talked about it. I knew him very well from Kauffman, but I gave him this and he's like, I want to get LinkedIn or Twitter. I said, all right, go get one of them. I was like, usually they go away, they never come back. Ko comes back, he's got Twitter, and this amazing strategy. I'm like, all right, this guy is the real deal. So that's normally what I would do. But the expression of the fund has to come through your personal zone of genius. It has to come through your purpose. If you don't build it through your best self, you have no chance of getting into an interesting level of deals. And gosh, just getting into the top 30%, that doesn't even guarantee you won't even make a profit. You have to get into the top 10% to be marginally interesting. You have to get into the top 5 to be a really serious fund. So you've got to be, you got to be pretty stellar. And you don't have to be you don't have to have superpowers. You have to match the strategy of the fund to the thing you do really well. It doesn't have to be big. It has to be sharp. And you've got to drive it in there, and you've got to earn your spot and build your credibility. And that's the advice I would give people.
I see. Interesting.
And make sure the other thing I say to people, and I may have said this to you before, is being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is like having these programs where you can check your grades in college every day. I know exactly where I am with my lit class and my history class and my math class. I can see every quiz, every homework. Like right now, I know exactly what my grades are in every class. That's one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur. You have a lot more pressure in the short term, but you know every day, every week, every month, are you good or not?
Right. Yeah.
Being a venture capitalist is like going to college for 4 years and never getting any feedback from the professors. And you show up for graduation in the 4th year and you find out if you get a
Got it.
you have to have a level of self-belief, because you might look at the professor and go, oh, that professor gave me a dirty look, or that test seemed really hard. And I have no idea where I stand. Like, I don't know if I failed that last class 2 years. I don't know anything, right? Because the data you get in venture doesn't mean anything unless it's a cash on cash return.
Right.
Everything else is meaningless. And normally, you've probably heard this in the business, lemons ripen first. So oftentimes you're going to learn you're stupid before you're smart. So by the time you get that fourth, and it's about 4 or 5 years where you start to get some real feedback, probably by the 4th year, you've probably gotten more bad news than good news with regards to your talent as a venture capitalist. And you got to keep going. And some of these people, they go for 10, 15 years before they ring the bell and they become rock stars. Mike Moritz tells the story that he didn't do anything for 8 years, and he eventually won the firm. But he didn't do Google or Yahoo in his first 2 years. He did those in like his 12th and 15th year or something like that, like very late in his career. So you have to have the willingness to really bet like the filet mignon of your career on this area where you're getting no feedback. And gosh, if turns out you're not good after 10 years, you're reinventing yourself.
Right. Yeah. So, and also you also told me that you should start helping companies that you really like, you really feel the potentials in, right? And that's the way you start.
You don't need to have a checkbook. Be a venture capitalist. This is my buddy Ravi Mohan, is a Kauffman fellow. He taught this from day one. Like, just be a venture capitalist today. Go. Your edge is not your checkbook. Your checkbook is a commodity. It is a commodity. Your edge is what you bring, your talent, your skill. Go use your edge. Get out there and do it with companies. And look, if they won't take your edge for free, your edge isn't very good.
Right. So your advice is don't just start, fundraising, find your sweet spot, find your zone of genius, find out what you want, start helping companies, and then fundraise, invest in them. And it's a long-term commitment, 10 years commitment. Okay.
Yeah. Invest in one, see if you're good. And if you're good, then you got a story.
Awesome.
And I mean, anybody can do it. I think anybody can do it. I think anybody can be trained to do it. But there are things you probably need to do to put yourself in a position to compete at the highest level. It's you have to have a certain level of intelligence, and you have to have a lot of drive. But you can. I think most people can learn how to do it pretty well.